Hello, and welcome to Women with AI, a podcast dedicated to amplifying the voices, insights, and expertise of women in the ever-expanding field of artificial intelligence, while engaging in conversations about the impact of AI on gender, equality, representation, and more. I'm excited to welcome someone to the podcast who is an AI product leader, investor, and entrepreneur who has previously worked for Meta, the social technology company that formerly operated under the name Facebook, and she was actually recommended to me by one of our previous guests, Dr. Eva Agapaki, so you can check out her on episode 13. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit more about who I'm speaking to today. Natalia Burina is a seasoned AI product management leader with a proven track record of setting strategy and delivering business results. Natalia invests in early-stage B2B AI companies at Storm Ventures. Prior to Storm, Natalia led multiple teams at Meta AI, including video understanding, privacy, and transparency. Before Meta, Natalia helped to define early versions of Salesforce Einstein and helped to launch Microsoft's Bing search engine. Natalia holds a degree in applied and computational math. She was also the founder of Parable, a creative photo network that was bought by Samsung in 2015, and her strengths lie in the intersection of deep tech and design to create beautiful, intuitive user experiences powered by AI. She's also got her own podcast, AI Studios, where she's had conversations about AI with the world's top AI builders, artists, researchers, and thinkers. So I'm very much looking forward to learning from her experience with that, as well as all things AI. Natalia Burina, welcome to Women with AI.
Well, thank you for having me today. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Great. Well, before we start talking about everything that you are involved in, please can you tell us, tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself, your journey to where you are now, and how you got into working with AI?
I was born in Mostar, which is Bosnia Herzegovina, and as a child, narrowly escaped the war there. And this was possible because my mom was able to get an engineering job in the US. So that those early experiences really meant that they made an impression on me. And there were a couple of things that I took away. So, one, our world is very delicate and anything can happen at any time. We saw this recently with COVID. um, and two, engineering skills are a means of survival. So, after immigrating to the US, I was very driven to succeed, and in particular, to really get to a place where we had safety and stability in our lives. And so, I studied applied and computational math at University of Washington, and I absolutely loved it. Though honestly, I'm probably inherently more inclined towards more creative professions. Initially, I gravitated towards literature. I just read everything in sight. I also love music and dance. So somewhere in an alternate universe, I'm probably a writer, a pianist, or a ballet dancer. But I ended
Love
up
that.
in tech, and I managed to stay in tech for many years now. Uh, there were some periods of reluctance and doubt, but overall, I feel very thankful and grateful that I was able to catch this wave of incredible tech growth and innovation. And then, secondly, I happened to be at the right place at the right time. So, very lucky. Now, you ask how I ended up with working with AI in particular. Well, it goes back to 2008 when I worked on the team that built the first version of Microsoft's Bing search engine. And while it may be a little bit debatable, depending on who you ask, web search really is an AI application at enormous scale. And it has a lot of the attributes that you really need to make AI work at scale. So, to be specific, search engines use natural language processing to understand intent behind search queries. Anytime you type something in, the results that you see in a web search page are there because there are ranking algorithms that incorporate AI to determine the order of those results. And there's many, many other ways that AI is used in web search engines, but that was what got me started. And from there on, I just kept getting jobs that were related, and I progressively grew in my career and built out that expertise.
Oh, cool. And so you've transitioned from, I guess, building AI products at companies like Meta and Salesforce and to investing now in AI startups as a venture capitalist. So kind of what motivated that shift and Does your background influence your approach to the investments you're making?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The shift was serendipitous. I didn't set out to become a venture capitalist. End of 2022, I left Meta. I was super burnt out, and I just took a little bit of time to recharge and focus on my health and family. And as wonderful as the break was, I started a podcast and I wrote and I was tracking industry developments. And I really like it, gave me the opportunity to look at the big picture. When you're working at Meta or Salesforce, one of these companies, or when you're deep down in the trenches building AI products. These jobs are very consuming, and you have to develop specific product strategy, you have to execute on specific goals, you have to keep your teams healthy, but you don't have much time to think about what's happening from a big picture, from a point of view, from an industry point of view. And so, having taken that break, I was able to take some time and to think about that. And then I happened to attend Storm's Enterprise AI Summit around 2023. I met the team. We knew people in common. We started talking. They liked my track record and background as an operator building AI products. And I wasn't sure if investing was for me. Again, it's not something that I had sought out. And maybe, I think there's probably a bunch of people who don't, maybe they're not that familiar with venture. So I thought it would be helpful to break down what exactly a venture capitalist does. And there's
Yeah.
really four things. One, you source deals, so you find potential investment opportunities. Two, picking deals. I think this one is probably the hardest, deciding which companies to invest in. Three, there's the process of closing a deal. So you have to agree on the terms with the companies. And four, you have to support your portfolio companies, where you connect them with candidate customers, employees, you give feedback, etc. And so for me, the biggest reason for the shift was really the opportunity to learn what successful companies look like. If you're building product, you focus on the product, but you rarely think about the business, unless you're like an executive or a very very high level executive in a company the size of Meta. So one of the lessons I learned earlier in my product career, it's actually not enough to build a good product. You have to also build the business. And so VC for me is the opportunity to learn things from a business side and get this unique view where I get to see a lot of companies in different markets and at different stages, and also learn how to assess a business. What does good look like? Um, it was also important to me that the team was amazing. And then to address the question of how my background influences my approach to investments, I always think about investments from the product of a builder. Um, I know I've seen what works. I've learned hard way what doesn't work. And investing in B2B is particularly interesting because B2B, in a lot of ways, is well behind in AI when compared to what big consumer companies have built out. You may wonder, like, why is this the case? Consumer products are built more in a bottom up way. New features are derived from looking at large volumes of data and user feedback. And B2B companies rarely have this kind of infrastructure. So I feel like B2B is an enormous opportunity, and B2B has yet to kind of get there. It's moving there. And so from an investment perspective, it's very interesting.
Yeah, because I guess, yeah, you can help shift them in the right direction with all your experience.
Exactly. And we know that, B2B, building products in B2B is an entirely, it's very different from consumer. A lot of it is very customer driven as opposed to data driven.
Yeah,
And with
because
AI coming up, all of those companies will have to become more and more metrics and data driven. And that's where I excel. And so I feel like I can add a lot of value to potential investment companies who come for investment in our portfolio companies.
yeah, because I guess at Meta, you worked on AI technologies for what's it, a global user base of around 3 billion people. And that just seems
It
mind-boggling.
is
So
it is insane.
I mean, can you share some of the challenges you faced in creating AI that can be fair and unbiased across such a diverse range of populations?
Yeah. So when you have a product that touches 3 billion people, um, it almost feels like you could sneeze and hit millions of people. It's just like insane. You make small changes and you still impact billions of people, which are entire countries. A funny anecdote about this one is Facebook, a lot of the times before they would launch something entirely to production, they would roll it out 100%. They would test it out on smaller countries. So
Oh,
New
wow.
Zealand is a good was a good country where a lot of things were tested. But the reality is, New Zealand still has a population of 5 million people. So you test it out, you put it there, but you still impact 5 million people. And so again, you have to be very careful and mindful of what you do in the massive scale. Um, because there's such a massive user base, it really means you're spanning different cultures, different languages, different backgrounds. They all have their own context and operate in a very different way. We all know that certain cultural practices are very different from country to country. And so there's so many ways that things can impact people in a way that's not fair or is biased and so on. But I'll just name a couple.
Mm.
So one is, you have to really, there's a lot of bias that comes from data. AI runs on data. Data is its lifeblood. But data a lot of times has historical bias. So what you use to train AI model often reflects bad things from the past. I'll give you an example. In the past, it used to be the case that most doctors were men.
Mhm.
Now it's like 50% actually think there might be more women. But if you use a lot of that historical data, AI learns from it and might predict that, doctors should be men
Yeah.
and are men. And
Yeah.
this is one classic example. The second one, data, it's hard to get data that represents literally the entire user base. So AI can perform poorly for certain groups. An example of this was Meta used to have an AI-powered smart camera. I actually don't know if they still have it. There was a product called Portal. And this AI camera would prioritize zooming in on white men because that's where it had most training data. So it wouldn't be able to recognize people who had brown skin or darker skin tones. And this is something that the company had to go correct. So there's data bias. There's bias that can happen in algorithms. AI can pick up ways that people engage with the product that may reinforce existing biases. Again, cultural nuances around languages. You think about there's there's like 7,000 languages in the world today, and there's a few really that have majority of people speaking them, but you want to be able to reach everybody. There's concerns around privacy, and then there's concerns around ethical considerations. And each one of these we could probably do a separate podcast on them.
Yeah.
There's so much complexity. It's when you're dealing with the population of literally, that spans the entire world. There's just like so many different flavors of problems and things that can go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what I've been learning. So each time I, speak to someone new or talking about AI or just reading around about it, it's that bias, and it's the fact that everyone's going, oh, it's great, or it's done this, or it's not done that, or it's doing this, and it's like, but hang on, we need to be feeding it the correct data and making sure and correct as in kind of making sure it's not just all the bias from previous times that are leading up to now, because you're right, times are different now. But if it's just learning from everything that's come before, because I mean, it's like picking up on, yeah, it's a white man. Because I spoke to someone previously on the podcast that it was to do with eye tracking, and it was only recognized blue eyes. So the eye tracking for the, it doesn't now and it's been changed, but it's the same kind of thing. It's just whoever's invented it just kind of models it on themselves.
Yeah.
And and I get, this is women with AI, so we're speaking about, you know, gender and that kind of thing, because I guess there's all that bias there. I mean, so as a woman, like with your background in AI and now being a venture capitalist, I mean, do you feel that that has been a sort of male? Is it still a male dominated field? I mean, what are the challenges that you're facing?
It is, but it has changed so much for the better than when I first started. Um, when I was first starting out, I just the big challenge for me was getting used to an environment where I was the only woman or one of a few women. I remember one of my first jobs, I don't think I saw any women in the bathroom for months. And so it's just like one is getting to comfort. Two, I think the biggest challenge really, especially early on, was um, getting sponsors. There's mentors. I feel like getting mentors is easy. You can easily get people to talk to you and to help you, but getting sponsors is a little bit different. A lot of times, what sponsorship means is that somebody is willing to open up doors for you and give you new opportunities and really vouch for you. And a lot of times sponsorship is, people see earlier versions of themselves in people that they sponsor.
Yeah.
And for me, it was very difficult to approach men who were much older, and to figure out how to build relationships. And so I feel like sponsorship is one that for me was particularly hard. I think it's still a challenge when people who are in leadership are predominantly male. But overall, I feel extremely lucky. I feel like I was kind of at the right place at the right time in the right field, taken a lot of advantages of this tech wave. So I wouldn't change anything if I could go back. And I also think it's always important to frame things in a way that's positive and advantageous. I think there's a lot of attributes that and thinking that women can bring to the table that really make things better and improve them. And so, if I was to give advice, I would say be mindful of the relationships you build over time. Make sure you cultivate them with high caliber people who are super smart. I, I think it's always follow the people as opposed to work on a particular problem. That's really what works. So yeah, you need to have technical skills, but you really need to have relationships with people. You need to cultivate those relationships. So that would be my advice.
That's great. Because, yeah, I think I was reading something earlier this week that was, I think it was on the BBC website. I have to try and find the clip, but it was just saying that there are women leaving tech because there's just not enough support, and it's that kind of like that funding for women. Because you're right, if it's just predominantly sort of male venture capitalists or men that are kind of investing it, they're just going to invest in what they know, what they recognize. So it's kind of, we need to encourage more women to just follow it, I guess, and get into it and stay in to the field and
Yeah,
support each other.
one other thing I'd say is I feel like tech has been very flexible and forgiving, and so this has been, especially now that I'm a mother, I really feel that it's helped me, and it's worked out well. That giving that flexibility where you don't have to work on any kind of a set schedule. You can take care of family responsibilities. And again, I think I've been lucky that in my roles, my managers and have been very supportive. um, so, I guess that's the other component is find people who are supportive and see the magic in you, who see that you have superpowers. And I would always err on the side of following those people as opposed to something which makes maybe gives you more money, or it looks like a better, working on a shiny new thing.
Yeah, I get, and that I can that sort of makes me think about not just like bias, but also ethical sort of concerns. Because I think you worked in like a responsible AI team, or sort of trying to make sure that it is ethical and fair. Like, how do you? how do you ensure that the sort of AI products that you're building or the ones that you're now investing in are ethical and fair? And are there any kind of examples you can give about how AI ethics kind of, I don't know, come into play or play a role in development?
Yeah, this is a huge topic. And part of the reason why it's so difficult to talk about is when you talk about AI, might as well be talking about software, right? It can literally mean anything. There's so many different problems that you could solve with AI or software. And, the way I think about it is really first we had machines, then we had software, now we have AI. So it's a natural progression of things. And some of these issues have come up before, but it's really have been exacerbated by AI. Um, at Meta, one of the tools we had was something called a fairness flow, which was a diagnostic tool to help machine learning engineers detect potential bias in AI models and labels used at Facebook. And bias can happen, and it can creep in so many different ways. But basically, what this tool did was it helped to measure bias. So you can't address bias and fairness unless you think about define what it means and you measure it, right? Um, the second thing is it would assess label bias. So this all goes back to the data that goes into AI systems. Um, labels of data labeling is a crucial part of that makes the AI run. So it's important to examine the labels used to train models, and if these labels contain biases, the resulting model might be biased as well. And finally, the tool had ways to visualize how things were working and metrics that helped engineers understand the nature and extent of the bias that was detected. And so there's a lot of benefits to do this. If you can detect bias earlier on when you're before you're built, as you're building the product, it's much easier to fix. Um, Fixing them after the fact, after everything has been deployed, you take greater risks, but it's also much more difficult to fix. And by understanding and addressing bias, engineers can really create models that are more equitable and inclusive from the get-go. So a specific example where Facebook used fairness flow was in the ad targeting system. So this was huge. It impacted many people. But to simplify it, basically, there's Facebook. The business is primarily predicated on the ads engine. They sell a ton of ads, and you have to think about what kind of ads people are seeing. So an example might be that ads for job opportunities, for good job opportunities, might be shown disproportionately to men, while ads for beauty products might be shown more for women, right? So
Yeah.
this is clearly an example of where there is bias. And so Facebook went back, implemented the fairness flow to analyze their ad targeting algorithms and figure out, this is one example, but there's so many more ways that things can go wrong. And they were able to detect potential biases across the board, measure the impact. And then third, ensure transparency. Transparency is something that's coming up more and more in AI products. It's important for people to understand why AI is doing what it's doing and to have visibility into how their data is used. So providing transparency to users about what's influencing ad targeting in this particular example really helps reassure people, and it's something, again, I'm seeing more and more adoption of transparency in AI. So that's one example, but again, this is such a broad question, and there are so many examples of things that can go wrong, especially when you're talking about 3 billion people. So
Yeah, because it's like it's otherwise it feels like AI is going to just start telling people how to think. Because it's like, because if you're only ever seeing one thing, how do you know that there's more out there? If you're only seeing beauty projects, or if you're only seeing this kind of job, or if you're only seeing that kind of holiday, or these kind of products, or yeah, it kind of it's taking the choice away, isn't it? In a way, it thinks it's helping us, or whoever's designed it. Because again, it's that kind of it's not doing it. It's, as you say, it's the data that we're feeding into it and letting it predict from. Just, I mean, I never accept the cookies anymore. We had some kind of like IT training at work, and it was saying it's tracking everything you do. Just never accept, always reject everything. So I'm always doing that. And the other day, a friend of mine had her phone, and I just went to like reject all. She's like, I always accept everything. But
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about AI privacy, and so I, like you, also am very mindful about who is asking for my data, what kind of data it is. And I think for certain things, not a big deal. It's okay. Like I want it to understand what I want. Like if I'm shopping for dresses or something, I actually like that AI knows what I'm looking for and what I want, so it can give me better suggestions, and it can help me shop. I don't know about you, but I do most of my shopping online, and I never thought I would be that person
yeah,
because I genuinely enjoyed shopping in person. But nowadays it's just like, oh, too many things to do. And so that's an example I actually don't mind. I like, what is the worst thing that can happen? It shows you the wrong kind of dress that you don't
yeah,
like. Big deal, right?
yeah.
But
And then
if
you
you're
might find something that you do like.
you might, yeah. And I want it to give me what I like. I want it to learn my taste. But if we're talking about, I think the other example you had mentioned earlier, something like period tracking apps. I
Yeah,
just
because yeah, if it's on all those kind of things, yeah, is that helpful? Is that
like,
controversial? Is it?
yeah, I don't want to share that with with anyone. That's my own personal data. It goes into how I function, and yeah, that's one where I'm not a particular fan of that application.
Because I think dating apps use a lot of AI as well, don't they? But again, it's that if it's just showing you that if you're making the wrong decision as a data, then you're going to keep getting the wrong people.
Yeah, that one is fascinating. I actually have had some ideas for how this could be flipped on its head. Just randomly, I want to share this with you.
Yeah.
Right now, if you think about the dating apps, all of them are predicated on the way that people look.
Mhm.
But what if we just took away all the pictures?
Oh my God. Listen, I've just started watching Love is Blind. I don't know if you've seen that, but
I am not, no. But I think there might be something to that. Um, Focus on not the external kind of, so indicators of success and
yeah.
wealth, but like focus on things that actually make you a better person, where a potential dating partner could help you,
Yeah.
or be a good match. And I think, yeah, I think there might be something there.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Because you want to have the sort of discussions. Well, what do you think of this topic, or what would you do if this happened, or what are your thoughts on that, or kind of what do you think a relationship should look like, and this kind of thing, or how would you support each other? And I think if you can kind of go through all those things and match all those bits, then you're kind of halfway there to liking
Yeah.
the person already.
Yeah, and I think that the trouble with, dating apps is sometimes people don't even know what they want. And I mean, this is true of building any kind of software or AI.
Hmm.
You ask people what they want, they can't necessarily articulate it.
Yeah.
And it's, sometimes, maybe we'll pick exactly the wrong person. So there should be a component of randomness and serendipity there, I think, that actually might be helpful.
Yeah. No, I think so. And because otherwise it's just it's not giving you the choice, and that's what I
It's
don't.
giving you too much choice.
Oh, yeah.
That's the other
I
thing.
mean, where do you think that's different in B2B than it is to consumer facing?
Yeah, it is the story of B2B and B2B AI is it's an entirely different ball game. And I mean, again, I think this is one where we could do a whole other podcast, but essentially consumer internet companies, so the Metas, the Googles, Microsoft is now considered an enterprise company, but the product I started working on was a consumer. Like web search is a consumer application. And so when you think about consumer applications, they are really completely, I touched on this earlier, they're data driven. And in order to build these, you need an experimental culture. So you need the data, you need to have a culture of we're going to experiment into the best product over time. you need to have the infrastructure where you can collect data, track it, and continuously look at the metrics. You can't know if your product is improving unless you're measuring it. And it turns out that this setup is actually ideal for AI, right? The B2B world works in a very different way. It's very customer driven. So you talk to your customers and you close deals. And because of this focus really on getting paying customers, it means that historically the companies didn't have the ability to experiment. They can't experiment and ship product quickly because they need to have they have paying customers that need to trust them. So these customers are inherently more sensitive to changes, which gives you less leeway to experiment. So as a result, B2B companies don't have many times the enterprise companies, specifically like the big ones, just don't have that experimental culture. And they need to make an organizational shift to where they figure out how to experiment into AI products that get better over time. Two, they a lot of times they don't have infrastructure that supports collecting data and having a feedback loop where the data that you collect makes the product better over time. They don't think about product metrics in terms of, like usage and engagement. Again, the focus is on paying customers and reducing the churn. So because of all of this, B2B has to make a cultural shift. And then it needs to fulfill a lot of the infrastructure requirements. But again, this is why I'm investing in B2B. I just feel like that is an enormous opportunity. It's lagging now, but it will catch up. And I think there are so many things that are going to get so much better in B2B over time. And so again, problems are actually opportunities. And
Yeah.
going back to your earlier question, like what would I give? What kind of advice I would give? I guess the other one was look at problems and challenges as opportunities.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, being a woman, sometimes looks like a problem, but it's also an advantage.
Yeah.
You might be the only woman in the room, but you're also the most visible person. So, you know, really step up
Yeah.
and make sure you put your best foot forward. And so every problem, while it might seem daunting, is also a hidden opportunity.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with that completely. So, I mean, yeah, and there's so many opportunities, and AI is really transforming the whole landscape, isn't it? I mean, how do you see AI transforming everyday life in the next 10 years? Well, could be the next 2 years. 10
Yeah,
years seems quite long.
big, big, I mean, again, I think it's just a natural shift. First it was the Industrial Revolution, then the technology and software, and now we're moving into the AI age. And so it's going to move into more and more aspects of our lives, and it's going to be, and it already is, it's getting into all of our devices. It's getting embedded everywhere. And there's a tremendous amount of hype around AI, but I also think that there's real value there and there's real promise. And so, I'll give a couple examples. So drug discovery, actually, we're now able um, to find new drugs and personalize them much easier with AI. And there's been a lot of examples of this recently. There was something called de novo antibody design with generative AI. And so this really is something, that traditionally drug discovery takes a lot of time and resources. And usually people have very little control over the outputs. So in this case, the antibodies that need to be generated were really always suboptimal. Now, with generative AI models, you can create antibodies um, with one round of model generation and reduce the time you need fewer optimizations. And so that one I think is really promising and really interesting. There's chip design is another one. I think NVIDIA has had a ball with this particular one. Overall, the trend is that AI is making us a lot more productive, and I think can be used to lead to give us higher quality work. So just last year, there were several studies that assessed AI's impact on labor. And really, what was found is AI enables people to complete tasks more quickly and improve the quality of the output. And so there's really potential to bridge the skills gap between low and high skilled workers. It decreases costs and increases revenues. So from a business perspective, like incredible things are happening here. So the potential is there, but it's like anything double-edged sword. There's also some danger if it's not done properly. Um, and so I think the future is bright. It depends. It's up to us to make the best of it. And I'm very excited about what's going to happen next. Although I'm at times a little bit scared too.
Yeah, me too. Well, I could talk to you all day, Natalia. There are many different podcasts we need to have as spin-offs, like so many topics. But where can our audience learn more about everything that you've been telling us?
I think the best way to learn is to build something, and there's tons of easy to use AI applications that I suggest people would should play with to get a sense of what are the things that you can do with the technology. So if you're at the very kind of beginning, let's say you're in the spectrum, or you're an AI beginner, you can play around with the tools easily and figure it out. It just requires a time investment and a will to learn. And the best thing to do is find something you care about and then use AI to support it. So let's say you like to travel. One of the things I love to do when I travel is I love to take videos. There's tons of AI tools that can make your videos better. So focus on what you want to do. What are the kind of outcomes? What are the things you're passionate and interested in? And then think about how AI can help you. If you want to get more, in depth with the AI, there are so many resources out there that you can learn things easily. I mean, MIT offers free online courses. This is incredible. We talked about
Yeah.
how technology can be used for good and how it can democratize. Literally anyone in the world can go online. All they need is an internet connection, and they can get MIT courses and learn. So I really feel like technology has commoditized education. It's made things easier. My favorite resources, I really like Coursera. Andrew Ng, who was an AI pioneer, has his own set of courses called, I think he actually founded Coursera, but he has his own set of courses called deeplearning.ai. You could take those courses and you could go in depth as much as you want to learn how to build, to learn how the guts of AI work. But again, I'd say don't learn for the sake of learning. Figure out how you want to use the AI. What are the problems you want to solve? And then go back and figure out what are the tools and what are the courses you need to take to get there.
Well, that's great advice. Brilliant. So finally, where can people find you? Is LinkedIn the best place?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I have my podcast. I'll be restarting that. I took a little bit of a break. And it's also on Substack and YouTube. And I love hearing from people. So please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, Britt, we'll put all the links in the show notes so people can find you. So, Natalia Burina, thank you so much for coming on Women with AI.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's been a pleasure.